Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. I'm TCaptainX. In today's video, we're going to be covering the best assault rifles for Rebirth Island Warzone in Season 3. Also, I am going to be including battle rifles and LMGs into this mix as well, though. So for the first part of the video, I want to compare the strengths and weaknesses of my top ARs. I know the thumbnail said top 5. I'm actually going to include a 6 honorable mention. That way we can include at least one MW2 AR. So in order for us to take a deep dive in some of these stats, we're going to be using the website I've been helping to develop, ggs.ai. Again, that's ggs.ai. I want to point out that you guys can get on this website yourself, find the best loadouts, compare stats, log your games, track your personal stats, and much, much more all yourselves if you're interested. Basically, we've created an AI algorithm that takes all the stats and data from these weapons and it ranks these loadouts from 10 out of 10 meta all the way from A to F tier. Also, I do want to give a quick shout out to True Game Data as he did help us out with a few extra stats like damage range values and some specific attachment data as well. So if we click on our weapons page, we can sort by different play styles: balanced, aggressive, casual, tactical. This basically just changes the algorithm to fit your play style. We can sort by range, long range versus close range guns, weapon type, and also what tiers we want to include. So I'm gonna leave it on balance. And of course, in this video, we're gonna be focusing on long range. I'll probably be covering the close range meta in tomorrow's video. So the only two guns that rank as meta right now is the MTZ 556 and the SOA Subverter. However, a lot of these A tier weapons are great as well. And depending on the situation, they might even be better than some of these meta guns. Now, if you click on the drop down, you're actually going to get multiple different builds. And we normally have these categorized by, we have creator builds, aggressive builds, balanced, and also tactical builds on some weapons as well. Now, to be able to look at these multiple different builds, this is a premium feature on GG's. And just to kind of explain and be upfront with you guys, we have thousands of hours into developing this website, and it literally costs us thousands of dollars just to run and maintain it per month. So that is why some of these features are premium. Of course, I'd love to be able to have all this information for free to you guys, but we do have to kind of at least make ends meet at the end of the day. But we do have a bunch of super cool features on the horizon for GG's. So if you want access to this stuff, and if you want to support us, I'd encourage you to check out GG's Iridescent, which is our premium subscription. So when you drop down, you can then hit the compare details button. That's going to add them to start comparing the stats if you want to do this yourself. So I'm going to add our MTZ 556 SOA Subverter. I've also added a SVA 545 build. I've added a BP 50 build. I'm gonna skip some of these LMGs right here, and the reason for that is because we're focusing on Rebirth Island for this video. Some of these slower LMGs I don't think are quite as good, specifically on Rebirth. On like Urzikstan or maybe the bigger maps, like maybe like a Fortune's Keep, in some situations they would be good, but for Rebirth I don't like these as much. I've also added a Holger 556, and I did add a STB 556 as the 6th build, just kind of as a honorable mention here. So if we scroll down here, we're gonna look at the time to kill chart here, and you're gonna have two features. TTK on paper, that's just if you hit every single shot. This is a combination time to kill where it looks at different body parts and the damages. What's the time to kill you can expect? We also have an expected time to kill, and this factors in accuracies like your recoil and whatnot. We have a pretty complex algorithm for figuring out the recoil and what accuracies you can expect to get. We can also adjust the range as well. I'm just gonna look at the paper TTK to start here. So the first gun that's gonna jump off to you is in the blue line. The SOA Subverter has the fastest time to kill, up to about 26 meters. Mid-range, it is great as well, but long range, SOA Subverter is the fastest killing gun of these 6 weapons I have choose here. And that is why overall, I've got kind of the SOA near the top of my guns simply because of that time to kill. Now the MTZ 556 in the yellow line, at close range, it's a little behind. It's not quite as good. It's about half a tenth of a second behind some of these. However, mid-range, it is great. And it's really competitive here in this mid-range area, which this 25 to like 50-ish meters is a very common area you're gonna be using your AR, and it also has low recoil as well. Another gun, the Holger 556, you're gonna see mid-range, and the orange line is also super, super dominant. BP 50 in the purple line is great up close to about 25 meters, but then it really kind of starts to fall off. But at long range, it's actually the second fastest. So it's great up close, at mid-range, and great at long range. BP 50 is one of my favorite kind of just versatile, kind of do-it-all type guns. And then the SVA 545 on burst is the green line here. This is a gun that has literally no recoil. Its time to kill is significantly slower than everything else, but with how little the recoil is, you're gonna be more accurate and you can expect more faster TTKs because of that low recoil. And then finally, the STB 556 in the red line is very, very competitive, up to about 36 meters. It does fall off kind of hard after that, but it's also very low recoil as well. So that's why I wanted to include that in there, because it is a great MW2 AR option. Now you can also switch us over to the DPM chart, which is damage per mag, and this is how much damage you can do do before you have to reload. So guns like the SVA 545 Burst and the SOA are great in this area. This means you can take out like an entire team without having to reload if you're accurate and you hit your shots. Whereas guns like the BP50, the STB really struggle. And then also the MTZ and Holger 556, they're not as good in that department. They're okay, but they're not going to mow down an entire team without having to reload. Now this stat right here, weighted expected time to kill. This is a premium feature, but this stat is like if you want everything put into one stat of a gun, this is it. Basically what this does is takes in the damage ranges, the recoil, the accuracy, all of that, and it says what's the time to kill you can expect in most situations. MTZ 556 is the fastest here. Holger 556 close behind. SOA, we have the BP50, STB, and then the SVA is way down at the bottom. But again, remember, this one is subject to change based on your recoil. If you have bad recoil control, this one might be a lot better for you. It kind of all depends, and we've tried to put it in an area where it's going to take like an average recoil, but again, this is absolutely subject to change based on your person. This is another fancy stat, which is just like damage per mag. It's how many downs can you expect to get per magazine. So like I showed earlier, the SOA and SVA 545 can easily get 3 downs without having to reload. Expected accuracies, again, you're going to see the SVA 545 Burst has by far the best accuracy, and that's because it has the lowest recoil of these guns. As we keep scrolling down, you're going to then be able to see all of the loadouts that we have recommended for these, its overall score, and you're going to get just a ton more stats. Now, not to overwhelm you guys, there's just a few stats I want to point out here really quick. The SOA Subverter is phenomenal in so many categories, but its main weakness is because it's a battle rifle, its handling, its aim down sight speed time and sprint to fire time are a little bit slower. So if you have to pull it out at close range, it might struggle in those categories. So you want to make sure you have, you know, a SMG that can handle those kind of close to mid range as well if you're going to use the SOA. A lot of these other guns have really good handling. The BP50 and the MTZ, also the SVA have great handling. STB a little bit slower. Also the Holger a little bit slower sprint to fire and ADS. So it kind of gets wishy-washy here in terms of all this comparison, but this is why I encourage you guys to check it out yourself if you really want to get into the details here. We also at the bottom have what we call synergies, and this is just taking like different stats that synergize with each other. So for example, if you have a gun that has a good time to kill and a fast fire rate, that makes a gun feel amazing. That's why the SOA, it has a like kind of average fire rate and a great TTK, so it feels really good. Same with the BP50, same with the MTZ, lots of other cool synergies to look at here. All right, so now let's get into the loadouts, and I will be showing you guys multiple different options of these. So coming in at what I would rank number 6 and kind of more the honorable mention is the STB 556. It is an MW2 AR, like I said, low recoil, pretty solid time to kill, but a very small damage per mag here. So in this first gun, I'm also going to talk about how I kind of build these guns. The Cassis Break is generally the best muzzle for recoil control on a long range gun, mainly because it helps our horizontal recoil control. That just really smooths the gun out, makes it easier to control at longer ranges. Also, firing aim stability is one of the most underrated stats, especially long range guns, for recoil control, because it reduces that randomness in the sway and recoil when you are shooting. A lot of people ask, okay, why don't you use like the Zem compensated flash hider? This is a great attachment as well, but I like it better for SMGs. The reason being is it hurts our bullet velocity and it doesn't help our horizontal nearly as much, which generally is more important on a long range gun. Now the Jack BFB, yes, it does amazing recoil control, but it kills your bullet velocity, also kills your handling. So generally the Jack BFB is just not that good of an option on long range guns. If you want to make sure you stay suppressed, the VT7 Spiritfire is always the best option because it's going to help a little bit of recoil control, but also help range and bullet velocity while staying suppressed. But it will not help that and smooth that recoil out nearly as much as a Cassis Break does. So after that, Bruin Heavy Support is still a great option because again, it helps with that firing aim stability and also a lot with our horizontal recoil control. They did specifically nerf this attachment slightly in the last update, but it is still one of the best options for recoil control. When it comes to the barrels of the STB, I like the 20-inch Bruin the best because it helps our bullet velocity and range and recoil. The FTAC B2020 is a good one as well. It doesn't help your range as much, but better bullet velocity and more recoil control. So if you want even lower recoil, FTAC FB20, but I like the 20-inch Bruin, especially on Rebirth. Definitely want to go with that 42 round mag as the biggest you got. On Rebirth, for my optics, I generally prefer running the Jack glassless optic. This is an aftermarket attachment that you can unlock through daily challenges or weekly challenges, I believe it is. The reason for that is because it gives you this firing aim stability benefit. And again, it just helps with that accuracy when it comes to long range. You could, of course, go with like a Corio Eagle Eye 2.5 if you want a little bit more zoom, but you're going to notice a lot lot more like shake in the reticle with this compared to using a 1x optic like the Jack Glassless. Moving on to number 5, this is the SVA 545, but specifically in burst mode. So this gun in burst has literally no recoil here. If we jump into the firing range here, if I switch it over to burst, I am, and let me switch my hand so that you can see my hand cam here. So I'm using a mouse here. I am not even going to be like holding it. And this is me just rapid firing it. It literally does not move. Again, you have to be in burst mode in order for this to work though. So because this gun has literally no recoil, we don't need to run like a Cassis brake or anything. So we're gonna run the sonic suppressor because this helps the most with our bullet velocity, which is very important for longer range guns. So you don't have to lead your shots as much. And we literally do not care that it hurts our recoil control because this gun doesn't have any recoil. After that, the SCV precision barrel adds range and bullet velocity. Bruin heavy support, we run this more because of the firing aiming stability. This does matter in terms of recoil control, but we don't really care about the actual recoil control it does because we just want to reduce that sway in the gun. 60 round mag gives this plenty of ammo. You could totally run the 45 if you wanted, especially like solos or duos, but 60 is great to have in trios or quads. Optic, this is a gun you definitely can run the Corio Eagle Eye 2.5, but the Jack Glassless optic is great for Rebirth as well, or even an iron sight if you wanted to. If you wanted to run an iron sight, you could put on something like a high grain for a little bit more bullet velocity and range. Now on Rebirth Island specifically, this gun is not going to be amazing because its time to kill isn't that great. But again, if you struggle with recoil control, this gun, it literally has none. Moving on to number 4, we have the BP50. And this is a gun that is just super versatile, very good handling for an AR, great time to kills up close and at long range, but it kind of has a weird drop off at mid range. So this gun doesn't have a ton of recoil. So I feel like I can use the Spirit Fire suppressor. That way we stay suppressed, get that extra range and whatnot. Lore 9 heavy long barrel, again, is going to help with our range and recoil control, which is most important on an AR. Bruin heavy support, again, same thing, recoil control and that firing aim stability, 45 round mag, and then the Jack Glassless. Now these iron sights are not bad at all. So you have two options here. You can take the optic off and you can go with the 4-bearer heavy stock for even more recoil control, super low recoil with this build. Or what I would probably recommend is you go high grain, get a little bit more range and bullet velocity. And like I said, these iron sights are super clean and the recoil is not bad at all. Coming in at number 3, we have the Holger 556. Now this is a slower shooting gun, but it is super accurate and it has one of the better weighted time to kills on GGs. So again, because it's a low recoil gun, I think the Spirit Fire suppressor is absolutely fine. Of course, you could switch it to the Cassis if you wanted to for even less recoil control, or more recoil control, that is. The Krios 6 match barrel, again, adding range and recoil. Those are kind of the two main things we look for in a long range gun for the barrel. Again, Bruin heavy support. For this one, I do like to run high grain, or you could also run high velocity. High velocity hurts your range, but it gives you more of a boost to your bullet velocity. This gun has great range, so you could totally run high velocity. High grain does hurt your recoil a little bit, but I think it's okay on this gun because it's a lower recoil. And then the 40 round mag is as big as you got, but it's a slower shooting gun, so the damage per mag is not bad. Now, if you don't like these iron sights, I think these iron sights are pretty clean here, and I generally don't mind them. However, totally could take off high grain and then put on an optic like a Jack Glassless, and this build as well is great. Only downside to running it with the optic is the bullet velocity is a little bit slower at 819. Not at all bad for Rebirth Island, but something to keep in mind. Coming in at number 2, we have the MTZ 556. I absolutely love this gun. It has a very fast fire rate, easy to control recoil. I do prefer to run the Cassis brake on this one though. The Spirit Fire, it gets just a little bit more wobbly. It's kind of like a weird shake that I dislike on this gun. So I prefer to run the Cassis. Again, MTZ Clinch Pro barrel. Now this one, there is another barrel, the Drifter barrel. The Drifter barrel gives you a little bit of recoil control, but the Clinch gives you way more bullet velocity. So it's almost like 100 meters per second difference in bullet velocity with this Clinch one. And I just tend to prefer that. So that's why I run the Clinch over the Drifter. Again, Bruin heavy support. On this one, I am running high velocity and not high grain, although you absolutely could switch it for high grain. And then the 50 round drum. Now the iron sights, not at all bad on this one. Again, if you run a bright colored camo, that center iron will be a nice color and it's easy to see. But if you want an optic, take off high velocity, I'd recommend a Jack Glassless here instead. Or you could make this a absolute just zero recoil beam with the MTZ Marauder stock. And then this thing is super low recoil. It's fast shooting, easy to use. If you're just like kind of a beginner level player, or maybe just average, and you just want something that's easy to use, it's not a burst like the SVA right here, great gun. And coming in at my #1 overall for Rebirth Island and in Warzone in general right now is the SOA Subverter battle rifle. Now, like I said, this is the battle rifle. The downside to this gun is a little bit slower handling. So you do have to be a little bit careful and make sure you have your SMG out in the right situation when you're running around on Rebirth. I do love the Cassis brake on this one because it just really smooths this gun out. Of course, you could switch to Spearfire if you wanted to stay suppressed. Dozer 90 long barrel, again, adds range and recoil control. That big 50 round drum, and it's kind of an average fire rate, so it's tons of damage per mag. Now, the iron sights are not bad on this gun at all. So you absolutely could take off the optic. You could put on either high grain, high velocity, or that Bruin heavy support. With the iron sights, I'll show you them here. They're not bad. They're very clean, very easy to see. But personally, I've just found I'm a lot more accurate with this gun with the Jack Glassless. Now, I am running the Motion V2 heavy stock instead of the Bruin heavy support. We look at the stats here, -12, -12 here, compared to, if we go to that Bruin heavy support, only -8 and +4. So that stock just gives you overall better stats. So you have to look at certain guns. On some guns, the stats are just a lot better on the stocks, and that's why I've elected to go with this instead of that underbarrel. Now, real quick before we wrap up, guys, I am going to be doing my top SMGs video probably tomorrow. I do want to just cover my perks that I have been running as of late. So Double Time and Mountaineer are my perk 1. Allows you to just sprint, get around the map much faster. And then Mountaineer, you can jump off super high buildings and basically take 0 fall damage. Just super great for getting away or for chasing people. My perk slot 3, I have been kind of playing around with a lot of different perks. I keep going back and forth between Quick Fix and Tempered. Tempered allows you to only have those 2 plates. It's quicker plating. And then Quick Fix is when you get a kill or when you start plating, it's going to start regenerating your health. Here's the difference between these 2 perks that I want to explain. If you get down to really, really low health, like less than 50 HP, Quick Fix is going to be the better perk in that situation, because as soon as you start plating and you put in 2 plates, you've already regenerated your health, and it's going to be basically more of a health regain than 2 plates with Tempered and your health hasn't regenerated. But if you're only getting 1 to 2 or just all of your plates knocked off but none of your health, then Tempered ends up being the better and faster way to regain and get back into a fight. Personally, I've noticed that most of the time when I'm taking damage in fights, I'm not getting absolutely 1 HP. It's just I'm getting like 1 or 2 plates knocked off instead of going all the way down into my health. So for me, I feel like Tempered just is better. Now, Resupply is great with some of the different tacticals and lethals. Cold-Blooded is really super underrated too. Stalker is a lot of fun if you're gonna run like a strafe build, but I normally go with Tempered. As far as my perk slot 4, I've also been going back and forth between Flex and High Alert. The audio on Rebirth Island currently is not great. There's definitely some audio occlusion issues where there's just 0 audio. So Flex does help with that. And also Flex beeps when you are nearby, like claymores, proximity mines. And I just freaking hate dying to those things. And that both of those got a buff in season 3. So lately I've just been running Flex so I don't die to those and get really frustrated by those things. But High Alert is phenomenal because it's gonna alert you when you're getting looked at by somebody. But I think the way Rebirth Island is laid out, High Alert's not quite as strong as on some of the other maps. If you're playing Fortune's Keep, Bondel, or Urzikstan, absolutely, I think High Alert's probably better. But on Rebirth, I think I'm liking Flex a little bit more. And then as far as my tacticals go, always run smoke grenades. Just they're so good for rotating and getting out of bad situations. Stims are good, but Stims, they just don't give nearly enough of the movement buff like they used to back in OG Warzone. Snapshots did get buffed, so Snapshots do look like a pretty interesting one to maybe start running as well. And then on Rebirth, I am running throwing knives unless I'm in solos. If I'm in any other mode, it allows me to get quick finishes when players are down. That way I can conserve ammo and get ready to take on more people instead of wasting ammo in the gun to get the full kill. Alrighty guys, that is gonna wrap up today's video. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Like I said, go check out ggs.ai and stay tuned for tomorrow's video, which should be the close range best SMG meta video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.